Hello and welcome everybody to the Beacon of Light podcast this evening. We are so excited to have with us the author named Angie Harris. And
Yes.
her excitement here tonight is going to be fantastic. So before we start talking to her, let's jump into this.
I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now.
And we are back. All right. As you can see running underneath the ticker underneath us tonight, the book that Miss Angie Harris has written is called Leaf Lessons. And so this is going to be an incredible opportunity. So Angie, welcome to this show and share a little bit about yourself with all of us tonight.
Well, my name's Angie, and I am a mental health worker. I've worked in mental health for the last 17 plus years. And over the last few years, I kind of came into this understanding that healing also requires spiritual healing. So in that time, I have been certified in mindfulness and meditation, energy healing, and sound healing. And now I offer support to mostly women at this point in their growing and releasing old beliefs and kind of grief, things that are holding them back from really getting in touch with their true self. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about where the title of your book came from. Leaf Lessons.
Yeah. So it's a unique title. I think that it can be confusing based on what when you look at it, you don't really know what is a leaf. Why is it Leaf Lessons? So back in 2003, I believe, I had a vision one morning as I was waking up, and I was in my 20s at the time, and I saw this leaf. It was dead and it was brown and crusty. It fell from the sky. And it was almost as if I was in the universe, like I was up where the stars are watching this leaf fall. And it fell down into this stream. And the stream was absolutely beautiful. I could see the bottom of it. It was almost like crystals, like all these different colors of rocks. There's beautiful trees lining it. And this leaf lands in this stream and starts to float. I watched the leaf, and there's a larger rock it comes up to, and it gets stuck behind the rock. And I watched this leaf start to struggle and panic and freak out that it's behind this rock and it needed to get around it in order to get where it wanted to go. And I myself was in agony watching this because I knew if the leaf would just rest, if it would just trust the stream and calm down, that the stream would carry it around the rock. But the leaf continued to struggle. I could not reach down and help it, nor could anyone else or God or the universe or anything. The leaf had to learn the lesson of trusting the stream. So after a while, it calmed down and it moved around the rock. And as I watched this leaf float, it would get stuck behind other rocks once in a while. And I noticed something really amazing happening. The leaf was turning colors. It was turning from brown to orange to red, like the fall colors. And each time it got stuck behind a rock, it got quicker at releasing and allowing the stream to carry it. And by the time it got to the very end, the last rock, it just kind of moved around it, and it was completely green, full of life. And I saw the leaf come to the end of the stream, and it was like it just floated off into the universe and just kind of disappeared. And then I heard a voice say to me, "This is you. You were the leaf. Trust the journey, allow the rocks to teach you the lessons, and you will heal and you will move through this process of your life, moving into your purpose and coming back into yourself. And I've never forgot it. At times when I'm struggling, I have to remind myself, I'm behind a rock right now. So just allow myself to release and trust the stream, trust the process, and I will always get around it. So that is really where the name of the book came from, is from that vision.
Wow, incredible. We already have a question from
Yes.
an amazing person that says, Angie, what do you suggest for us to learn how to move around the rocks in our lives?
That's a really good question. So something I have learned in the process of my own healing and growth and allowing myself to move around the rocks in my life is just to trust the lesson of the rock. What can happen is we get in these moments where we feel comfortable because a rock or the struggle feels good or is familiar. And it's not necessarily that it feels good. It's more so we are not sure how to release this part of our life. And so once we understand that whatever it is that's holding us back in that moment is really about teaching us a lesson, helping us to expand and grow, we're able to trust whatever you believe in, God, the universe, whatever it is, to just guide you around this rock, and that rock was there to teach you how to grow and to expand into your true self, which is why the leaf was turning green during the trusting of the flow. So for myself, the way that I have learned to trust the journey behind the rocks is to get quiet, get silent, ask questions. So I do that through meditation, and then allow myself just to feel what it feels like to be in that moment. If I need to grieve, I need to be upset, if I need to if there's some emotion in me that needs to be released, I allow it to happen. And then I'm able to move forward because I no longer am carrying that with me into the next part of my life.
Amazing, amazing. And it looks like our person says maybe to do that trust in the journey. She also asks, is it like to lean into the rock so the current can carry us?
So there's a difference between leaning and being and releasing. So when you lean into something, I encourage the people I work with, I encourage them to lean into feeling, to lean into pain, because pain propels us into our purpose. So if there's something painful in your life, instead of ignoring it and pushing it away and pretending it didn't happen, the best thing to do is to acknowledge it, allow yourself to experience it, feel it, and then release it. Because when we don't release these things, we store them in our bodies. And, if we're coming from the mental health field, there's scientific knowledge that when we don't release an emotion, we don't process it, it gets energetically stored in our body. And that's where some mental illness and some sickness comes from, because of those traumas are stored in our bodies. So when you lean into the pain, you lean into the hurt, and then experience it, and then trust that as you're doing it is being released from you, you can lay back into the stream and trust that you're going to move forward after that. But sometimes you actually have to learn the lesson behind the rock before you can move forward.
Love that clarity there. You need to learn the lesson before you can just move forward. So she has another question. I'm going to throw this up there.
Yeah.
How do people trust that inner voice?
Wow, these are great questions.
I promise I didn't put her there. She's I don't know who this is.
Trusting the inner voice. I would say that the best thing to do is to learn how to get quiet. When we are constantly moving through life and we don't take time to spend time with just ourselves and get to know our own consciousness, our own spirit, what is happening inside of us, then we don't have contact with our intuition, or that is always there guiding and leading us. But when we don't get in touch with it, it's harder to hear. It's harder to trust those moments when it's guiding and leading us, because everything's made of energy, and you can sense things around you, but sometimes we don't believe it, and we question it, and we don't always listen. So there's times in life that you might hear, don't do this or do this, and then you start to question it, and then you're like, well, I should have listened to my intuition. So for me, like I said, meditation is huge for me, because when I get quiet and I ask the questions of, the divine or my intuition or my spirit to guide me and lead me, I can feel comfortable and at peace about where I'm going and decisions I'm making.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that idea of where you find how you connect, make sure you keep clarifying that and fine tuning it, however it works for you. There's another question here. It says, do you think survivors tend to try to ignore the feelings and that's maybe how they stay stuck?
Wow. So, yes, I will say that's true, because I myself am a survivor. And if you have read my book, you would see some of the trauma that I've been through. However, I think what can happen is, for myself, I worked in mental health for all my life. And it wasn't until I really started looking into what I was doing with my clients, how I was serving them, and reading charts that came across my desk, that all of a sudden I had this clarity that I had grew up in an abusive home. And I had no idea. So when I started to allow myself to see that for what it was, is when I had to start to heal from it. But prior to that, I had no idea I needed to even heal from trauma or from being a victim of anything in my life. And when I acknowledged it and allowed myself to go through the process of healing, which for me, I did have to reach out for a therapist to help me, because I had a lot of significant abuse that I went through in my life. Um, it wasn't until then that I was able to release it. And I'm still in the process of releasing it, because healing is a lifelong journey. But yes, you can definitely get stuck. And I think you can also try to, when you push that part of your life away, or you don't want to acknowledge it, that's where we kind of turn to other things like addiction or codependency, or we repeat cycles in relationships. And so being able to see those things in our lives helps us to move forward. And it's all about, I do reference the Bible a little bit in my book, but being able to look in the mirror and actually see what is in the mirror without looking away, and what needs to be addressed. Because a lot of time we look outside of ourselves, but it's the process of looking inside that we heal.
Exactly. That process of that is really interesting. And this is a little side note, but when we take authors through writing their books, especially if they've had any kind of trauma, it's usually we'll say the first script, the first thing that they write is really in a victim kind of blame. The viewpoint is very blame. And then it kind of changes into this, but I survived. So then it gets this more energy of survival, this is all the process, right? And then we see it shift even more into a thriving, where they acknowledge the victim parts happened, how they survived it, but now how are they healing from this, right? How are they making the journey towards it? And then those that have, I say, who get it, they then switch into becoming their own victor, because they can see how the process is. And like you said, they're not like check and done. They're like, up to this point, this is how much I can put in the book, and I hope to continue the process of moving forward. And that's really fantastic. We do have another question, so I'm going to pop this up there too. Is there a different approach to helping male survivors from female survivors?
You guys are really drilling me tonight. So I I come from a point of view where we are all the same energy. We're all spirit. We all come from the same source. We are all created by the same, if you want to call it God, universe, whatever. We all come from the same. So the process of healing and moving forward is going to look the same no matter what sex you are. There is a need for men more so to really dive in and allow themselves to get in touch with their feminine energy so they can feel, because a lot of men are taught not to feel things, and they push things away and they ignore things because they want to stay in this very strong mentality, and I got everything together. And then you kind of see females in this society as a little bit weaker and emotional. So I think it's really bringing the masculine and feminine together and allowing it to both show up, because women also have this masculine energy. At times they need to step up and be leaders and guides and things like that, but they also have this nurturing side. So balancing these out in the process of moving forward and healing is going to allow anybody really to be able to process the emotions that come with anything they're healing from.
Right. And so this has been incredible to have all of these questions asked. So if we read your book, The Leaf Lessons, would we find some of these answers within your book?
Yes. Yeah. I do write a lot about my own personal healing, things that have helped me in my healing, and how to use these things in your daily life. So a lot of that is in the book.
Awesome. And so how is your book structured? Is it kind of here's the story, here's a lesson, or like can you explain kind of how you laid it out?
Yeah. So the first chapter talks a lot about my childhood, growing up, and then it goes into some of my trauma I experienced as a child into my teenage years. Then I talk about a rape I went through as a teenager and how that kind of formed my life. And then I moved forward into a sudden spiritual awakening I had in 2016, and how that completely transformed my life. And that's where I really started my healing journey. And from there, the rest of the book talks about some major losses I had in my life, and then the healing process of both trauma, grief, losing jobs. Like it's just like a lot happened at once in 2020. And so I talk about how I made it through all that. So that's kind of how it flows.
Awesome. And you talked about grief, and grief is such an interesting experience. And one thing is for sure is that in this life, we will experience grief because that's the only way that they leave this life. And so, can you share how you get through, or your experience at least, of what
Mhm.
happened for yourself when you had a loss of life
Yeah.
within your, your lifetime?
Yeah. Yeah. So in September of 2020, I experienced three major losses at once. And that wasn't all expected. I actually lost my job on the 18th. Then I lost my father to cancer on the 23rd. And then a week later, the day after the funeral of my father, I lost a foster daughter that I had planned to adopt. And she became dysregulated and destroyed my home and decided she didn't want to be in my home anymore. And so I experienced three major losses at once. And I found myself COVID had just hit, so I was completely isolated, could not find a job. It took me over 3 months to find a job, and had no idea what to grieve first because I'd had so much hit me at once. So what I decided to do in that moment, I had already meditated a little bit prior to that, but something in me told me I am only going to get through this by allowing myself to feel it. So I took time and I let myself cry. I let myself scream. I let myself feel all of the emotions in my body. And, and normally I would shove all that down and just pretend I'm okay. But in the process of releasing it all, I started to feel better. I started to realize that I was expanding in my understanding of how these painful experiences in my life were actually pushing me towards my purpose. And I almost felt as if my dad, who had lost, was actually coming to me and trying to encourage me to keep doing that. Um, and then I actually did have some really amazing experiences where my dad visited me in spirit. So for me, it was all about allowing myself to grieve as much as I needed to instead of turning to something else to kind of push that away.
So it's really, I think there's a strength there that when we decide to face the pain that no one wants to, the strength that comes from that is more than what you could have ever have thought of before.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I agree, it is so powerful. And sometimes there's those moments where the darkness, no, there will never be light again. No, that's
Yeah.
it. No, never.
Right.
And the blessing of time is, look, there's a pinpoint, there's a pinpoint, it
Mm-hmm.
happens. If
Mm-hmm.
you just hang on to that hope, it
Mm-hmm.
actually happens. So
Yes.
the idea of the grief and the loss, looking at it from your perspective, do you the question just popping up into my head, and I know because we've experienced just recently so many different friends who have lost their children to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like this rash of, within the last week, I have learned of 4.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, you just kind of have to sit down for a
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
because us who are left behind,
Mm-hmm.
so many questions that are not answered. How do you help somebody through where maybe you feel like there is no answer, like they're trying to fight? What do you do about that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm so sorry for the losses. That is so hard. And there can be a lot of guilt and shame that comes with suicide. And I really want to encourage those families just to allow themselves to release that so they can heal. It will never replace the loss. However, allowing yourself to feel pain is going to be the one thing that's going to help you get through that. And I will tell you, like, I have some clients that I'm working with, and they've experienced suicide in their family as well. And working with them, I've been able to help them understand that our life on earth is very short. It is, this is, we come to earth to learn the lesson of love and how to expand love to other people. And that's first by learning to love ourselves. And so as we release love into the world, we're able to not just heal ourselves, but help others to heal. And in my experience of loss, I had really been confused about what's next. Where do these spirits go, or these people go once they leave their bodies? And I had a very amazing experience where my dad came to me and told me about what it's like on the other side. And this shifted my understanding of death on earth. And I began to see it more as a release from pain, a release into this divine loving energy of peace and like complete love. There's nothing to explain what it feels like on the other side from what I've experienced. There's literally nothing on this earth compared to how amazing it is on the other side. So in the understanding of our own grief, we can have peace knowing that those who have went on to the other side are at complete peace. I will share just a little bit about the vision that I had where my dad came to visit me. It was one morning. It was probably about 4 to 5 months after he had passed, and I was still in a very, very deep grieving process. I had a vision where he came to me, and I was rushing and upset about something in my vision, and I was running, and I turned the corner. I was actually on a basketball court. I don't know why, but I turned the corner and I saw my dad. And of course, I was excited. And so I ran up to him. I saw what he looked like. And he had, blue jeans on and a blue striped shirt. And he looked just wonderful compared to what he looked like before he passed with cancer. And in my excitement, I was just hugging him and excited. And he grabbed my shoulders and he pulled me back. And he always called me Ange when he was on earth. And he pulled me back and he said, Ange, there's nothing, no one, or anything on this earth you should be that upset about. Because when you get to this side, the only thing that matters is love. And it was like everything shifted for me. It was this most enlightening moment that I just realized my dad is so good right now. It's me that's in pain. And so I visited with him a little bit more about his experience in heaven and how it was going. And I felt really good. And I started to walk off. And in my vision, I just had this epiphany. Wait, he's dead. He's not here. And I turned around and I looked and I said, Dad, you're dead. How am I talking to you? And he looked at me and he said, as above, so below. You can manifest anything you want, Ange. And in that moment, I understood that I could trust things on the spirit side because they're still with us, even on earth. And so I ran back and I was hugging him and excited that I was able to communicate with him as a spirit. And in the middle of this process, I did not realize what was happening, but as I laid in my bed still, I was crying and I was sobbing and I was so upset, and my dad in my visions hugging me, and I felt so at peace in my vision. And he pulled me back again. He said, I need to go. Your body's getting upset. And I was so confused. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? I feel fine here with you. And he said, your body is getting upset. I need to go. And in that moment, I realized I was having an out-of-body experience, and I was with my dad in spirit, where my spirit was at peace, but my body was still grieving. And so I understood that I had to come back into this moment where I felt the pain of missing him, but I was able to carry that peace with me. And that's really what helped me to heal this process of grieving. So
amazing. It's such a beautiful vision. Thank you so much for sharing something so intimate. And also, we have people that are on the same healing path, healing from their grief and their journey currently. So I really encourage you to go and get Angie's book, Leaf Lessons, and see how it can help you, because this life is short. There's only just a few moments that we can collect together. So why not understand how to have that peacefulness within your life, read up on some of the information that she has, and know that there is the process, and there's so many of us around to support you. Really, that's what tonight is for. And we are so grateful for you and all the questions that you've had. Again, share this out with everyone. We enjoy this Beacon of Light podcast for this very moment of hope. And that's the point, is if we can amplify your hope, then we have done a great service for this evening. So thank you again, Angie, for being a part of it this
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you.
And we wish you all a very wonderful Tuesday evening, and we will talk soon. Make sure you go to Amazon to grab her book, Leaf Lessons,
Yes.
When Trauma, Religion Collide, and the Process of Spiritual Awakening and Healing.
Yes.
We'll
Thank
see
you
you all. You're right. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.